doctors of 20 years cannot confirm or deny that my hair falling out is a result of this.
This is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with Workweek in Pacifica, and we've been covering the whole struggle of the residents and workers of East Palestine, their effort to protect themselves, get health care, and also get compensation to move out of a contaminated community, which is still suffering and which their families are still getting medical problems. And this has been covered up by the press, the fact that they've lost their health care. And joining us today is Jamie Ray Wallace. She is a resident and also was with SEIU 1199. She was a union activist at Cleveland State University, and she has been involved in organizing a fight back to protect the community with the Unity Council, and also taking up cover-up by government agencies and Norfolk Southern of the health conditions of the residents and workers. So welcome to our show, Jamie.
Thank you.
So Jamie, you, as I said, have been involved in a long struggle to get justice and also to get proper information about how you're being affected. And maybe you can talk about that, because there was just a hearing yesterday for a settlement where a federal judge apparently said not going to listen to experts about what actually is happening to the residents in East Palestine.
Right. There's been a cover-up since day one. I feel like the EPA has been covering up information. Their own inspector general did an investigation early on where they showed that the EPA gave the residents reason not to trust them. One of the things that they had done is messed up some test results that they posted online by a decimal point, which in this situation, a decimal point could mean the difference between life and death. They messed up when they did air testing of our homes. The equipment that they used couldn't test for all contaminants of concern, nor could it test for other contaminants at low enough levels, levels that were okay to live in. We've just watched mistake after mistake by the EPA from the very beginning. So I don't know why I expected any more from the federal judge that was appointed to this class action. I've watched my community be deceived by the lead counsel for the plaintiffs. These attorneys are supposed to be working in the best interest of the community, yet they had test results from an expert that they hired that they buried. Instead, they decided to find a toxicologist who had worked for Dow Chemicals, Exxon, Chevron, and a couple of energy companies in the past to get on a town hall and to tell residents that there would be no long-term health effects and that there would be no cases of cancer related to the chemical exposure from the derailment. When this was brought up in the courtroom yesterday, the judge didn't even address it. Residents that opted in with objection, when those letters were due back on the 1st of July, residents were told to include whether or not they wanted to testify at the hearing. No residents were asked to testify at the hearing. There are lead plaintiffs that are supposed to represent the interest of the community. A lot of them have lied about who they are when asked. Others, I've never seen any of them at any of the EPA community meetings, at the CDC meetings. I've never talked to any of them. A lot of other residents will say, I've never personally talked to them. So how are they representing the class? I don't even know that any of those who were part of the lead plaintiffs even were relocated from their homes.
And when this incident took place, this so-called accident by Norfolk Southern, apparently the EPA went there and, first of all, they didn't contact all the residents, but they did tell people they could return to their homes. There wasn't a danger. Is that true?
True. They say that the federal government says that the EPA was on the ground within hours of the derailment. Yet somehow Norfolk Southern was able to just cover up all this contamination and build their tracks and start moving their trains. How the EPA didn't see that if they were on the ground, or did they purposefully allow this so that they could get these tracks back up and running? They had to lift the evacuation or the trains couldn't come through. the trains cannot travel through an evacuated community. So the EPA prematurely said it was okay to come back. We've shown that time and time again by now. And, we were just told that it was safe, and it wasn't. My own home. I knew as soon as I pulled in my driveway and couldn't breathe and look over and there's chemicals flowing down my creek, it wasn't safe to be at my house. My own house, the railroad's toxicologist came in back in February of 2023 and said it was contaminated. So if I had just blindly taken my child home and not thrown a fit, she would have been continually exposed to these chemicals and even possibly died from it. From, like I said, from the beginning, we've been pushed over by every single agency that has come to East Palestine, and every single action that has been taken, we've had to fight for, whether it was cleaning up the tracks, whether it was dioxin testing, making sure creeks were clean. This was all citizen pressed issues. It wasn't something that was being done because it should have been done. It was being done because we wouldn't shut up.
And one of the things I learned from an interview yesterday was that one of the companies that Norfolk Southern hired to do the testing of the streams was Tetra Tech. And I know that Tetra Tech was involved in a massive cover-up in San Francisco, Hunters Point Shipyard and Treasure Island. Over $1 billion was spent, and they committed fraud in the remediation, and two of their lower level managers actually went to federal prison. Yet Norfolk Southern hired this company. Is there a connection between the cover-up going on in San Francisco and what they're doing in East Palestine?
I think it's a systemic issue with this particular company and their testing. And they probably know, just like the scientists that work for all the big polluters, that if you're a big polluter and you want someone to push out the narrative that everything's fine, that this particular company is willing to do that.
And in the course of this struggle to protect the residents, there have been toxicologists, inspectors that have come to the community and to do inspections, independent inspections. Who are these people, and what did they try to present at the hearing yesterday?
Well, we have some independent testers that have come in to help us in the community. We've had various people come in. We had Andrew Welton come in from Purdue University. He's getting ready to publish his book. We have had Scott Smith, who is an independent tester who has done an extensive amount of testing that goes directly against the narrative that's trying to be painted by the EPA. He's been to, I think, like 60 different disasters. The EPA has said that he's qualified to take these samples, but yet the EPA tried to attack his credibility. It's just kind of funny that at one point in Flint, Michigan, the EPA is agreeing, oh, this guy's good, his testing is good. And now all of a sudden, when it goes against the narrative that everything is okay, he's not qualified. We have George Thompson, who has come in. He was an independent chemical expert. I guess he was like contracted out for years. He came out of retirement to come out and speak on East Palestine and to, help bring awareness to how big this disaster was. And then Stephen Petty, he was the scientist. He's one of the lead dioxin experts in the world. And he was hired by the lead counsel of the class action to do testing in East Palestine. And they actually suppressed his information, and he is still not allowed to release it. So both Scott Smith and Stephen Petty, and I believe Dr. Thompson also submitted affidavits to the court a couple of days before this final hearing, explaining to them, the information that they had found, and the judge basically ignored it.
So you're saying that this federal judge, even though these affidavits from experts, toxicology experts, said that there's serious health hazards, and one of the things that George Thompson has said is that that the combination of these chemicals, vinyl chloride with other chemicals, creates even additional hazards for health of the community members, because when the chemicals mix, then you get new problems as far as new chemical reactions. So the judge did not even question their report, and also did not ask the Norfolk Southern about these issues.
No, the judge just basically went on with the hearing and acted like none of this stuff was ever brought up or said. It just shows the judge's attitude. I believe that she already had her mind made up of what she was going to say when she walked into that room. And, at the end, I was upset. Like, I'm very upset that, these attorneys that are supposed to represent the community, used PR tactics to try to deceive them, told them there'd be no long-term health risk. All of these things that was told to this judge, and she just ignored it. And as she, gave her ruling without even taking a minute to think about it, I was walking out the door and I yelled, "This is a sham. Our own attorneys lied to us." And the judge yells to her security to put me on the pavement. That shows how much we've had a voice in this as, the plaintiffs in this case. The judge didn't want to hear from us. The lead counsel never contacted anybody in the community asking for evidence that we had testing, health problems, nothing. This was not done in the best interest of the community. It was done in the best interest of pocketbooks. And exactly what you just said, Steve, is the elephant in the room. These reportable limits that the EPA is talking about, it's based on single chemical exposure. So we say, okay, here's the limit of vinyl chloride that you can be in for extended periods of time, but they only subjected that subject to the vinyl chloride. What happens if you have all these chemicals together? Like you said, even if they're below those reportable limits, not only do you have the burden on your body of all these different chemicals at once, but they also interact in certain ways. I guess the easiest way to explain that is, there's a lot of medications that you're not supposed to eat grapefruit with, or, caffeine and aspirin together cure a migraine, but separately they do nothing for a migraine. There's zero research on that. And that's why it's so important, not only for East Palestine residents, but for the entire country, for anyone living within 30 miles of railroad tracks, to support this type of research. Dr. Gollum, University of California, San Diego, is doing research on East Palestine right now. She is the doctor that did the research on our Gulf War veterans when they had this same multiple chemical exposure. She has, proven that, that these chemicals in combination had caused these illnesses in our veterans. And she was an integral part of the PACT Act being passed, which is what we need in East Palestine. And not only is that research going to help us understand what's in our bodies, but it's also going to be there in the future for when this happens again. I mean, it's already happened again, just not to this magnitude. So supporting that research would not only help us, but it would help everyone across the United States, because the fact is this research doesn't exist.
And there are other toxic dump sites, radioactive dump sites in Ohio, where that there are serious health concerns for the residents and workers. And just recently, there was another railway derailment near Cincinnati, where chemicals were being released by a train car. And there have been more than 1,500 derailments since the catastrophe at East Palestine. What does that say to you, Jamie, about the reckless behavior of the government to continue to allow these disasters to take place when they could stop them?
Well, now you bring me to Railway Safety Act. I was just up on Capitol Hill last week talking to a group of women from Bhopal, India. It's been 40 years since they had a chemical plant explode in their community. 40 years later, they're still having birth defects. But I took that time while I was in DC to meet with some different senators and congressmen and women on the Hill. And exactly what I told them, like, railway safety is not a blue issue, it's not a red issue. Like, if you're not, who can not be for safety? If you're not for safety, you're not for the people, and you shouldn't be on Capitol Hill. every minute that they delay putting, stronger safety regulations on this train is a day that they're putting human lives at risk, their own constituents, anywhere these trains run through. Like, I knew our government was run by money from, different lobbyists and whatnot, but not to the extent where they're willing to risk human life. The control that this huge corporation has on our government, it's scary.
And President Biden came to East Palestine a year after the incident. What did he do when he came? Because I know there was a rally of residents demanding health care, demanding compensation to move out. I mean, you have a situation, as you've explained, where residents are forced to live with their families in contaminated homes. I mean, isn't that criminally poisoning people in a prison in a contaminated environment?
Oh, right. And that's, again, bringing it back to this lawsuit and all the politics and stuff, with this lawsuit, people that were the most chemically sensitive and out of their homes will get virtually zero, if not zero. They decided that they were going to deduct all the money that Norfolk Southern reimbursed residents to stay in hotels, to stay in Airbnbs, to, be out of their homes for a year from these settlements. And because it's such a low amount, yeah, it looks great, 600 million, but look at the breakdown. These people are going to be forced to live in those contaminated homes. They have no way to get out. And then add on top of it, the health insurance aspect. Like, to me, the very least we deserve is health insurance. The very least we deserve. Again, if if our attorneys cared anything about the community, they would have at least got us some type of health insurance, so that we can secure our own, medical needs in the future and those of our children. And the fact that it took Biden so long to get here, I just don't understand. When his own son died from exposure to the chemical burn pits in the Gulf War, I mean, he's openly said that that's where Beau Biden's brain cancer came from. And that we as parents are facing that exact same fate for our children and for ourselves. And he couldn't even bother to come out here and show us that somebody cared. We feel completely abandoned and left here to die with no health insurance.
And it has not been declared a Superfund site. And also, under the Stafford Act, they could issue a declaration of a mass incident casualty site, and that would allow you and other residents to get health care and also compensation to move out of the community. Why are they refusing to use the laws that are already on the books to protect the residents in the community? Because I understand additionally that people are dying, more people are dying in that community because of the toxins and the contamination.
Right. We don't know, we don't know if it's from the contamination or not. But when you start seeing, a higher rate of deaths and you start seeing, your neighbors all coming down with the exact same diagnoses, it's just, it's terrifying. And, as far as the disaster declaration, I don't know why they have not, given that disaster declaration. First of all, Governor DeWine had to ask President Biden. Initially, President Biden said that he would help in any way we needed. Obviously, he won't. We had to go down and disrupt at the State House to even get to get DeWine to ask for the disaster declaration. That was, I think, June or July of 2023 that request was put in by our governor to the president, and no action has been taken on that since. It's all political. They're up there playing politics, with my family's life. The same reason why I feel they stalled this Railway Safety Act is nobody wants JD Vance to have a big win before the election. You know what? I care more about human lives. And this should not be about politics, because I'll tell you this, that train never stopped and asked us if we were a red or blue area before it derailed here. And it's not going to stop to ask the next community either.
The fact that also the EPA, even EPA staff who were sent to clean up, they themselves got sick.
Yeah. Oh, we've had EPA staff members get sick. One of JD Vance's aides got sick when he was down here. We've had all kinds of different news reporters and the CDC. You'll still see under the Biden administration, CDC and FEMA and EPA were ordered to go door to door. But where does it say that the CDC went door to door for one day? They got sick with all the same symptoms that residents were complaining of. They left and never even told the community. We didn't find out until there was a FOIA request and a journalist put out that all of these CDC workers had become sick. Like,
And
how do you
this-
do that? CDC gets sick and you never say anything? Like,
Well, I mean, both the Senate and the Congress could have congressional hearings to
right.
investigate what's happened. Have there been any hearings in Congress about what happened? Because it seems the
Well-
suffering, the trauma that you're going through is continuing.
Well, there has been, congressional hearings in regards to East Palestine, but what's a hearing if nothing's being done? There's been no action, and we're tired of hearing, what's going to be done when we're suffering today. Now, PA state legislators, excuse me, that's my adult chronic cough. They had two different hearings down in Darlington, I believe it was, or Enon Valley in PA, where the state legislators came down. We've not heard from our state legislators. I've repeatedly asked to meet with them, and I have not even gotten a meeting with them or Governor DeWine. Of course, when this first happened, his voicemail was full. When we went to DC, Unity Council went to DC in July of 2023, and we met with like 12 senators and the DeWine's office all in one day. There was only like one senator that didn't meet us in person in DeWine's office, and they were the most undereducated on the situation. When I say, well, they covered up the contamination and took off, they were like, well, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. So it was almost like explaining it to someone in kindergarten, whereas the other offices either already knew about it or at least were smart enough to study it before we came to visit. So I just feel like, again, we've been abandoned by our state government, by the federal government. We've been screwed every step along the way. And yesterday was just another example of how they're doing nothing for us.
There is an effort to get the Biden administration to declare it a mass incident casualty site under the Stafford Act so that the residents can get health care and also get compensation to move out. There are some unions, the Minnesota Nurses Association, the Professional Staff Council, AFT in New York City, other unions, IEM, the UE, have called on Biden to do this. And I understand there's going to be a rally in Washington, D.C. on October the 18th at the EPA, where residents and organizations, because there are a lot of other environmental organizations, can support your right to get health care and compensation to move out. And what are the reasons you think that the Biden administration is not instituting it? He's on his way out. It's one community. You feel that maybe if he does it for East Palestine, other communities like Pikeston, where there's radioactive contamination, other communities could demand the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I mean, if you look at the issues that we've had in East Palestine, these aren't new issues. These are systemic issues. And I think that they don't want to set precedent where they actually help people that have been exposed to chemicals. They don't want to take action to prevent it. And I don't care what anybody says, it all goes back to money. It's about the money. Human lives are just a cost of doing business at this point. I don't feel like the government has a genuine concern for the people. They care more about campaign financing than they do about, this huge corporation poisoning thousands of people, including children. Where is their legal liability? I mean, we've already shown through NTSB hearings now that, Norfolk Southern tried to impede a federal investigation with NTSB. That they lied to two governors in order to get them to think that the only choice they had was to blow up these 5 tankers of vinyl chloride. I mean, I just don't understand how they are allowed to do this without any type of accountability.
And also the mental trauma and stress has led to, why don't you talk about that? Because I do know that one resident and activist who had spoken out did take her life because of what she's going through. And many others must be feeling the same kind of situation, the mental fear, the stress, the mental health care problems that people are having at this point.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Tough one to talk about there. I will say, some of my own issues, I have always suffered with mental health issues. I've always been an advocate of, mental health awareness. I'm not ashamed to say that I needed medicine before the derailment to help me, with the mental health issues I had. But add on the derailment, especially being a community advocate. Norfolk Southern paid off our leadership in our village right away, with luxuries like $25 million parks and, $1 million here that's giving money to this and that. Oh, to, beautify the community. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. So our community is very divided. The adult bullying that goes on Facebook, it's not intelligent debate. It's flat out bullying. It's posting pictures of people. How would you like to wake up to this every morning? My mayor and fire chief sent out some pretty rude text messages about me that were released internationally via a FOIA request. We've had the police department, posting posts about us disrupting at the state house and how, classless it was. When you have to do that to have your voice, that's what's classless. I've never done anything like that in my life. My heart was pounding. I was scared, but it's what it needed to be done to bring awareness to get help for my child. This is my child. So, let's add that to your stresses, all the bullying. And then on the other hand, you have the people that are messaging you every day, people that see you in public that are thanking you for standing up for the community, saying things like, I started having seizures and I can't tell anybody because I don't want my kids to be bullied at school, and you fighting for us means so much. So every time you want to take a break or you want to quit, you start thinking about all those people that you're letting down, and then let's add in that you're homeless. Some people are still homeless. We were homeless living in a hotel, my husband, my mother-in-law, my 4-year-old daughter, and I, while I was trying to find out, what the EPA was lying about and what was going on with the contamination. You talk about the time away from your family, how much time I've given up with my daughter, with my husband, trying to balance still giving my child a childhood while fighting for her future. And that's not even the PTSD from the actual accident itself. So, I could sit here and go on about the mental health struggles, but I will tell you they are real. They are real, and it's a lot. Every day you have to motivate yourself to get back up and fight because they want us to quit. That's what they want.
And the reaction yesterday to the judge that you should be thrown out on the pavement. It sounds like the judge was herself basically working for Norfolk Southern and the lawyers. The lawyers, I understand, got $200 million for this settlement.
It's a $600 million settlement, and they brag about, the biggest lawsuit settlement ever with a railroad company, and it went through so fast and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's a total of 30%, 27% for the attorney's contingency fee, and 3% for their cost. So whatever 30% of, I think it's like $180 million they're getting off the top. The other thing that was being argued about yesterday at this hearing was, all these attorneys came in early on and signed people up. for lawsuits. And then the judge combined it all into this class action. So not only do those legal fees come out of your settlement, out of whatever you're left with, you have to pay your own attorney 33, 40%, whatever you agreed to. So we're getting charged legal fees twice, on this. And when you're talking about, 600 million, again, it sounds great. But if you look at my family of four, that's 70,000 per household. So you divide 70,000 by four people. And then, wait, let's remember, we're going to get zero because we were living in a hotel and Airbnbs for 6 months. So the most heavily impacted residents are going to get zero, and our attorneys are walking away with $180 million for not even a year and a half of work. Why do you think they did this big PR push and lied to people? They wanted to line their pockets. They should all be forced to come here and live in Chrissy Hilton's house with their children for a month. I'm saying just a month, not even the rest of their lives, like they're trying to force her and her 93-year-old mother to do.
And you're going to continue fighting. You have a Facebook Unity Council. You're working with others, many others in Washington, D.C., and you're fighting to defend yourself and others and other communities. Is this movement growing, and are you connecting with other communities around the country?
I actually started a group called Chemically Impacted Communities Coalition, where I'm trying to bring together other chemically impacted communities from all around the country, and actually probably internationally, now that I met my soul sisters from Bhopal. Because again, even the Bhopal incident, when I'm sitting there listening, it's all the same things that happened in East Palestine. You call someone, you're like flabbergasted, you think you're crazy. There's no way the CDC told our doctors not to write us prescriptions for vinyl chloride. There's no way that I'm telling this doctor, can you send me to be tested? And they're saying, no, CDC said you couldn't. But you call someone from the BP oil spill and they'll say they're still doing that. So this is something that is systemic. So we have reached out. And actually, Unity Council just got us fiscal sponsorship. So we will be posting a GoFundMe soon, within the next few days, because the nonprofits that have come in to quote unquote help us, some of them have taken advantage of the community. There was a lawsuit against one group through the Attorney General of Ohio's office that took a bunch of money and said it was for residents, and it never went there. There's another local nonprofit that took the most money of any other nonprofit for the East Palestine community that has not even done so much as buy us a bottle of water since February of the year it happened, maybe March. Yet they're still sending out emails to national listservs saying East Palestine needs water. So what we've realized is, unless we manage the money, $0 has come to the people yet. We've gotten mutual aid in the form of water from other communities, household supplies, but no one is here helping pay utility bills. People have to continue to buy water. We had a flood of donations in the beginning. Now, with the price of groceries, and some people are still, washing in, cooking with, drinking. Definitely everyone drinks the bottled water. So we are trying to do something that is actually going to benefit East Palestine, and also for the long term. These chemicals don't go away. No other, nonprofit or, national environmental organization is going to be able to support East Palestine for the next 50 to 100 years. So, we're going to keep moving forward. We're not going to stop.
And that incident in Bhopal, India, Union Carbide, which is Dow Chemical, and the women you met are still fighting for justice, for healthcare, the same struggle that you're involved in here in East Palestine.
Right. And it's the same thing. Like, a German scientist came in right after this disaster, and he had some kind of like vitamin or mineral that you could take that would make the chemical come out of your body through the urine, and the Indian government banned it. Just little things like that you're like, and then right afterwards, like you said, the company sold out to Dow Chemicals. Dow Chemical said, oh, well, we accept their assets, but not their liabilities. They still have the contamination laying there 40 years later. It was just horrific. And when I sat next to the woman speaking from Bhopal, she was 4 years old at the time this happened, the same age that my daughter was. And it really was an emotional journey. I wasn't expecting, sitting there with those women and speaking about these chemical disasters.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Jamie, this struggle that you're involved in is a struggle for all working people.
Right.
Because people don't realize that what happened in East Palestine could happen in their own community and is happening in communities around the country. And of course, labor should be in the forefront. The AFL-CIO, I know there's a campaign by the Justice for East Palestine Residents and Workers to get Liz Schuler, the president of the AFL-CIO, to support this initiative, because the labor movement and union should be fighting for their members and for working people to get health care. This is basic necessity and compensation to move out of those communities. And many of them are trade unions, such as yourself.
Correct. It is. We're just regular working class people. And I guarantee you, if this would have happened in a wealthier community, this disaster would have been treated completely different than it was in East Palestine.
Okay, well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Solidarity.